The bailiff is literally walking next to me and he's placing the handcuffs behind my back. And it was like the Spirit of the Lord said, speak, Kaysia. And that was the first time I went from being this college student about to graduate to my own legal advocate. And I remember telling the judge, I said, Your Honor, I'm scheduled to walk across the stage to receive my bachelor's in political science. If you please let me walk across the stage, I promise I will turn myself in. So he tells the bailiff to let me go. I walk across the stage and I literally traded my cap and gown for a jailhouse jumpsuit to serve my sentence.
Florida's not just where we live, it's where we build legacies. Welcome to the Florida Forge podcast. This show is designed to celebrate the entrepreneurs shaping our state's future. Leaders who care about more than just profit. Why? Because the businesses we build today will define the Florida our children inherit tomorrow. I'm Gavin Elliott, a Florida business owner for over 25 years, and together we'll uncover the grit, values, and vision that forge what's next in the great state of Florida.
Kaysia Early, I'm so excited to get to talk to you. We were both assistant public defenders. You're an extraordinary litigator, but more than that, you've overcome so much adversity to be where you are today. And I'm proud to be a member of the bar with representatives like you in it. So welcome to Florida Forge Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Gavin. I'm so excited because, we shared a couple of war stories and we agreed on what we experienced. So I'm glad to talk about it today.
That's brilliant. Now I have to ask, in speaking to you before these interviews, you have a fire in you. You have a passion. Even just a second ago when you were talking about negotiations, your facial expression changed and you can see the passion come out. So, where does that come from? Where did that passion arise?
Well, it's putting my clients first, seriously, in all honesty, because I was on the other side of the criminal justice system and I was once a client. I was once a defendant and I understood, I felt how it felt to be in a position of need. And we take off oath of office. So having that experience on the criminal side, that fire is in me. And of course, on the civil side, when you're fighting these giant corporations, they have this arrogance about them and they don't look at things with the eyes that we do. So that fight is there and it's not going anywhere.
That's good. Now let me ask you regarding this. What is this situation, if you don't mind me asking, that unfolded with your attorney back whenever that was?
Let's talk about it. So
yeah.
I am in my senior year of college, first generation. I'm about to graduate that year and I was working 3 jobs, actually. I had a full-time job overnight working in a hotel. I had a part-time job on Capitol Hill with a congressman. And I also had a part-time job working at a shoe store in addition to going to school full-time. So I was just busy, busy, busy. Well, the shoe store job, when my friends found out where I was working, they would come up there and I would discount the shoes against store policy. And eventually I was caught by management because it was wrong. I admitted my guilt as soon as they took me in the back. And after I admitted my guilt, law enforcement was called and I was arrested based on my admission. Now, here's where things get kind of dicey because I'm in college. Of course, even though I'm working at 3 jobs, I'm working at 3 jobs to pay my tuition. So I do not have money to pay for a private lawyer who would spend more time on my cases and actually care. And I want to make this caveat because, as a former assistant public defender, that we were called so many names of public pretender, fake lawyers. And that stigma is because, unfortunately, there are lawyers who are assistant public defenders that just don't care. But I am standing by the principle that there's more that care and that will zealously advocate. But unfortunately, I did not have that attorney. So what happened was on the day of sentencing, because I took the plea, I was like, yeah, I did it. I'm ready to serve my punishment. My attorney told me, oh, you'll be fine. You just have probation and you can graduate. Well, on the day of sentencing was 2 weeks before my graduation. And the only words I heard was, I hereby remand you into custody. So I'm like, wait a minute. So I'm whispering to my attorney. I'm like, I thought you said it was be probation. I said, I'm graduating next week. And he's just standing there. He didn't even respond to me. He's looking at the judge. The bailiff is literally walking next to me, and he's placing the handcuffs behind my back. And it was like the Spirit of the Lord said, speak, Kaysia. And that was the first time I went from being, this college student about to graduate to my own legal advocate. And I remember telling the judge, I said, Your Honor, I'm scheduled to walk across the stage to receive my bachelor's in political science. If you please let me walk across the stage, I promise I will turn myself in. And then he looks at me as if he didn't know any mitigating circumstances. So he tells the bailiff to let me go. I walk across the stage, and I literally traded my cap and gown for a jailhouse jumpsuit to serve my sentence and
Jeez.
probation and restitution and everything else that followed with it.
This was a first offense for giving discounts. And I remember, like, that's probation every single time. Why was it different? Do you have any idea why this was different?
I don't. And, it kind of caught my attorney at a surprise as well. I think several factors came into play. Number one, when I made the admission, one of the questions were, how many times did you do this? How many times did you give discounts? I was like, I don't know, 15, right? I just threw a number out of the air, right? So that was consideration because I did it several times. There was no register receipt. I didn't even know how many francs came in. I just wanted to take full responsibility and answer all the questions. So part of it was my admission, which is why I advocate, don't speak at all. We know that. The other one was, unfortunately, my attorney did not provide absolutely zero mitigation to the prosecutor or to the court. So no one knew that I was in college with a bachelor's degree, although the prosecutor has access to the files and saw that I did not have a criminal record. No one even knew that I was actually pregnant. So when it was time for me to surrender, by that time I was 4 months pregnant. I wasn't showing. And in my head, I wasn't even thinking about my unborn child. I was thinking about what just happened. So I still was sentenced to a period of incarceration and a county sentence. And thankfully, 3 years probation, restitution. What they did was, again, I pulled a number out. I said 15, and I pulled a number out. They multiplied 15 by how much the shoes were discounted by. And this was over 20 years ago. And over 20 years, anything over 200 was a felony. So
wow.
I was charged with felony embezzlement.
That is so extreme. All right, first off, from common human experience, whenever anyone has a job at somewhere, all their friends ask that person, hey, can you get me a discount? It's super commonplace. Secondly, why are they filling a jail cell with a college graduating, first generation, pregnant mother when people are stabbing, shooting, raping, murder? Oh, it's disgusting.
Gavin, you're right. And that's the thing. I actually had so much resentment to the court, to my attorney, to everyone else. But I think I needed that experience because I always wanted to be a lawyer. That's why I majored in political science. But prior to my incarceration, I wanted to be a lawyer for money. I knew lawyers made money, and I knew that I wanted to go into politics later. So I was like, okay, well, most presidents were politicians, and then they were lawyers previously. So let me go that route. And then when I become a lawyer, I can be like a real estate lawyer. Like, criminal law never, ever crossed my mind, right? Until my first night in custody, until my experience with my public defender, which is how, by the way, I became an assistant public defender, because I wanted kind of retribution and help and equalize the system. But the second punishment, because remember, I was pregnant. So the second punishment, when I first went in, it was general population. But when I was on the phone.
They put you in Gen Pop?
Wait. They put me in Gen Pop initially because remember, no one knew I was pregnant. I wasn't showing.
Oh, okay.
So I'm on the phone to who's my husband now of over 20 years, by the way. And I'm complaining about the food. I'm complaining that I can't take my prenatal pills. I don't know why I assumed that they knew I was pregnant, whatever. Next thing I know, they're knocking on my jail cell door. They pull me out of general population and they put me into solitary confinement. So
Isn't that a punishment normally?
it normally is. However, as a female pregnant, I was actually, it was 3 people to a cell in general
Oh, okay.
population. And there were 2 lower beds and 1 bunk bed. So the last person that gets in gets the bunk bed. So of course I was the last one in general population. And because I was on top and because other females, I had to be separated for liability purposes. All of this I didn't know. I was like, why are you guys separating me? What did I do? It was the worst thing ever, but it was also the best thing that could have ever happened to me was that solitary moment that changed my life.
You know, and this reminds me of a saying I've said in other podcasts, but the basic backstory between heroes and villains is exactly the same. Something terrible happened in their past. Now, a villain wants to lash out at the world, hurt the world. A hero does not want anyone to feel that pain. And what you did,
Yes.
how you transitioned was heroic. It really was. Let me ask, was your, not at that time your husband, but was your now husband, was he by your side during all of this? How was he involved?
Yeah, so a lot of I tell this portion because I grew up with a single mother. So my dad had 8 children by my mom. They were married, and then he leaves. I was 8 years old. I'm the middle child. So he leaves my mother and his 8 children. So when I had to turn myself in, I remember telling my boyfriend at the time, I was like, listen, you can leave because I don't want to come out of jail and then you're gone. Because in my head, I'm thinking if a husband can leave a wife with 8 children who are all his, by the way, then surely you can leave me with one and we're not even married. And he was like, absolutely not. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here for you when you get out. And I was like, okay.
He's a good
So
man.
he not only was he there, when I got out, we got baptized, we rededicated our lives back to Christ, we got married shortly thereafter. And lo and behold, we're going celebrating on December 4th, 2025, 21 years.
Oh, that's awesome, Casey. And you know what? Marriage is, you rarely hear the happy stories about it, you know, and you have one, and you have an extreme one because I imagine a lot of people faced with the circumstances your now husband wouldn't be as honorable and as good a person. He really loves you. You're lucky. I
I'm
hope you find
blessed.
that someday. But let me, and I will tell you a little bit about myself. I won't go into too much detail, but we came from England. We were relatively well off. And my family got sued. And in England, we're not litigious. Not certainly back then. America's very litigious, as you
Yes,
know.
we are.
And my family, as a result of this lawsuit, either directly or indirectly, lost everything. My dad left the house. I didn't see him for a few years. We moved from a nice house in Intercoastal to a house in a less economically advantaged area, if you would. It was a 1-bedroom with my mother and the 3 of us, myself and my 2 brothers. And like that was really my motivation for practicing law because it hurt me a lot. And I promised I would never let anyone hurt like that. It's the reason when I got divorced, I'm 50-50 with my kids. That's why I stay involved because
Yeah.
having someone have to feel what I felt is impossible to me. I can't allow it. So that's why I started practicing law and became a public defender. Like what impact did your father leaving like that? Because I know the situation very well. And by the way, I was actually 8 as well when my father left me.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
so we
like
got that in common. Well, initially when he left, I didn't really feel any pain because the last thing he said to me, he told me he would come back, you know. So for me, my older siblings, they were crying. So it didn't affect me because I'm like, I don't know what he told you all, but he told me he was coming back. So for years, I kind of because sometimes he would leave for long periods of time and then he would come back. So if he specifically told me he would come back, that's what I held on to. But as the years went on, I realized he was not coming back. And I kind of grew to resent that. So when I turned 16, this is when internet first became popular, Google, where you can type in someone's name. So my older sister found him. By this time, I'm living in Maryland. And he's in New York. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to meet him. And I go up there, and the whole train ride up there, I'm thinking, all I want to know is why. And for all these years, I already practiced what his response would be. It would be sorrowful. He would be, remorseful. And I remember meeting him for the first time after the 8 years at the age of 16. And I asked him that very question. And I was ready for him to be remorseful so that I can finally forgive him. And he was a total opposite. And so it just reopened up this wound again. And I vowed not to even have a relationship with him. Well, then fast forward, I get married. I have two children. I have four now, but I had two at the time. And I said, you know what? If he doesn't want to have a relationship with me, at least let me introduce him to his grandchildren. And so again, I go up there back to New York and I try this again. And it was the same cold-blooded response.
Wow.
It was arrogant. And I said, I can't force anyone to love me. And at that moment, I chose to forgive him and not wait on an apology to forgive. And when I released him, all of the hurt, all of the pain that I experienced that I held on to, I was able to not only let my guard down towards my husband, but I was able to live in peace, not waiting for him to give me that grand finale of an apology.
Wow. And what you did is really hard to do. I mean, as I grew up as a man and had my own family and my own kids, I still didn't think it was right, but I had a better degree of understanding. But yeah, that pain when you're a child is so visceral, so strong, and it shapes everything. And forgive them 7 times.
You have to.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, to be honest. But you did it, and so raised by a single mom, as was I. You have this. You basically go to jail for what I'm pretty sure half of the people in retail do every bloody day. And now you come out and you're college, you go to law school. And to be honest, I mean, full disclosure, I was charged with a DUI when I was in college. I was guilty of sin. The case ended up getting dropped. What I was told was the officer who pulled me over got fired for sexual harassment within the police force.
Oh, wow. So you
Yeah.
testify. Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. But I do not. What I did was wrong then.
Yeah.
And but then you have to go in front of the Florida bar, and I didn't actually have to go. They appointed me to a psychologist. He actually said, if we did not allow people at the University of Florida who had drinking problems to be an attorney, no one from the University of Florida would be an attorney.
That is so true. It's crazy because when you think about all the legal events, what do they surround around? Happy hour, drinking,
Correct.
bar. So you pass the bar, but can you pass this other bar? So it's kind of, counterproductive to host all of these events, and there's never a shortage of supplies. So we got to do better.
We do. Now, let me ask you, how did you have an attorney represent you in front of the bar, or did you do it by yourself?
No, I actually had to get an attorney, but here's how it occurred because there was a 7-year gap in between me even applying to law school. Because again, I'm a first generation college graduate. I get out of jail, I do my 3 years probation, pay my restitution, do 250 hours of community service. But in my head, because I had no mentors or anyone to tell me, I figured because I was charged and had a sentence for a felony embezzlement, I can't be a lawyer. So that was already ingrained in my head. So I just said, I'll do the next best thing. I'll become a paralegal. So for 7 years, I was a paralegal at a prestigious law firm in Washington, D.C. And then I transitioned to become a paralegal at the Patent and Trademark Office. Well,
Wow.
one day, I'm during my lunch break, I'm scrolling on the internet and I come across an article for a former drug dealer who is now an attorney. And I'm saying to myself, now, wait a minute. If you, drug dealer, can become an attorney, surely my embezzlement charge is not as bad. Well, That's when I made the decision to do a full circle moment because I grew up in Florida, went to DC for high school and college. I applied to law school in Florida because I want to come back to the community where I was raised. Because I said, if I become a lawyer, I want to give back to my community. So I get accepted into St. Thomas University School of Law in Miami Gardens. But then the admissions kind of gave me a warning. They pretty much said that there's a strong possibility that you will not only graduate from law school, you'll pass the bar and you will inherit this debt and still will not be able to be sworn in. Is this something that you're willing to gamble on? And I said, absolutely, because I didn't tell you this, but this is a part of my story, Gavin. When I was incarcerated, it was as if the Spirit of the Lord met me in my jail cell. And the message to me was, when you get out, you rededicate your life back to me, you will be a lawyer. And then the vision goes away, right? And I'm saying to myself, either I'm hallucinating or God is real. And so
God is real.
I chose to challenge this notion that I didn't want to serve a God simply because my mother raised me to serve this God. I wanted to experience him for myself. So when I got out, that's why I got baptized. I rededicated my life back to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And then it was like a period of silence for those 7 years of being a paralegal. I started to lose faith because I'm saying, well, God, you said I would be a lawyer and you're a God that cannot lie. So I started to challenge and question him like Job did. And then I realized as I started to read my Bible, it said faith without works is dead. So, yes, I had the faith to be a lawyer, but what am I doing? What are the works that you're doing to be an attorney? So that's when I took the LSAT, applied to law school, got accepted. And it was like the closer I got, I'm like, wait a minute, maybe God is real. And so that moment of when the dean said, do you really want to do this? I thought about that vision I had and I said, yes. So I go forward, I pass the bar, I graduate, and then I have to, like you said, I hired an attorney. So we go up and I sit before a board of 5 people. And of course, my attorney prepped me, but there's no way she can prep you for the questions that they ask. And
Really?
they're grilling me to the point where I'm crying inside. I'm already defeated inside because I'm saying to myself, the way they're talking to me, this is just a waste of time. We're just going through the motions. They're going to deny me, and I don't know what I'm going to do afterwards. Until
That's it.
so they requested 5 recommendation letters, right? So I think I had 4 at the time. And so I didn't tell my children at the time. I had 3 children. My oldest is the one that I was pregnant with when I was incarcerated. He was 10. And he says, so we're packing up, we're going up north to, I think, Tallahassee or Tampa. And he's like, Mom, where are you going? And I'm trying to brush him off because I don't want, you're 6. What do you know? And I said, Mommy has to go and I'll be back. Well, where are you? And so he keeps questioning me. And finally, no, he was 10. And finally he says, so I tell him where I'm going. And I said, Mommy's going. And I got people wrote letters about Mommy. And then he says, can I write a letter? When I tell you a light bulb went off, I never considered the same son that was in my belly when I was in jail asked to write a letter. So I said, how am I gonna do this? And I always told him about the jail story. So he already knew where Mommy came from because I wanted to show who I was and not hide it. And he was old enough for me to share that story. He writes this letter. I have this letter to this day, and I look at it from time to time. I'm going to frame it because when they read the letters, they were all on regular paper, so you couldn't tell which letter they were reading. But I knew when they got to my son, this is what happened. I observed their body. Their shoulders were stiff, and and then all of a sudden, I see this. And inside of me, once I saw those shoulders, I'm reliving it. I said to myself, they're going to give me a second chance. And it's all because of my son. I truly believe that letter. I'm going to show it to you, Gavin. That
No,
letter.
I need to see it.
That letter. And I didn't tell him what to say. And I actually read it on our way up because we drove up, my husband and I read it and I just bawled. I bawled. I cried. I cried. I cry. I want to cry now because I knew. I was like, I thank you. Thank you, God, for giving me a second chance.
There's so much there that resonates with me, and I have 2 crazy stories about the voice of God. I'll do the short one. I was with my daughter in my car. My daughter, and we're going to talk about her more later as well in the context of your fashion brand. But she was being a typical teenage girl, and it was driving me nuts. And like I was dealing with a lot that day, and the sky was clear, not a cloud in the sky. And you mentioned a crazy thing, and this will play in as well. And so I get out of the car and I'm like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things through Christ. I must have repeated it 5, 6, 7 times. Whenever the last one came, this clap of thunder explodes in the sky. And I'm like,
Where did
so
that
first thing I do is look around to see if anyone else is to see if I'm not insane. And it wasn't. And I mean, that really, there are 2 Bible verses. The other one's another story with God's voice, but I had it tattooed on my shoulder. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, from Philippians.
Yes.
And he does speak to us, and he is good. And how does, you're an incredibly, I mean, when you said Job, I'm like, oh, I mean, not everyone knows about Job, you know, like you have how does your faith impact your practice as a lawyer?
It's primary. I'm telling you right now. Actually, that's the decision that made me quit the public defender's office. I'm a Christian first, and I'm a mom, attorney, and everything else second. And I say that because I literally experienced Christ in my jail cell. It changed my life. And
Man.
even if I didn't become a lawyer, I knew that God was real, but he knew the desires of my heart. And he will give you the desires of your heart. But he just wants us to love him with the free will, because he already had the angels, bowing down to him, crying, holy, holy, holy. He has that. So what I chose to be an assistant public defender because like I said, I experienced the not so good side and I wanted to give back. So when I tell you I was the best assistant public defender there is, I was there for 14 months. I tried 56 trials. I think that's still,
Dang.
yeah, yes, I did. I took everything to trial. I don't care if it was on camera, because I knew if you can't get that camera footage in through chain of custody, and I've had not guilty verdicts because of that. And most of the time, the deals weren't good. So I'm like, well, let's go. So then it was kind of hard for me to keep that separation of church and state. I remember on my signature line, I would have a scripture, and I was told I had to delete it because, we're paid through the state. And I understood. In my office, my colleagues, they had potty mouths and they would curse. And, I wasn't acting holier than thou, but I knew a standard that I wanted to keep. So I would keep my door closed because I didn't want to hear that. And I would have gospel music playing because my job was stressful. I would pray with my clients while we're waiting for the jury to deliberate. Like, I did this for real. I did it from the heart. And I had to step out on faith because I was realizing that I was getting a lot of pushback. I wasn't being this obvious Christian, just my light was shining too bright for my environment. So by this time I had 4 children, and God really revealed to me, he said, start your own law firm. I'm like, no, I did not. Because I'm like, I have 4 kids. This job gives me insurance. I got a steady paycheck. There's no way we'll cut our income in half. And then at the final moment, I said, you know what, God, I'm going to step out on faith because I know that you put this desire in my heart. And so you're going to have to provide. And it'll be 10 years in 2026 that Earley Law Firm has been established. And I have never had to advertise for a client. In fact, I turn them away now because I'm transitioning from criminal to personal injury. And clients, I get them on a daily basis. He provides my daily bread.
Like manna from heaven.
That is. I just read Exodus this morning. I was in Exodus 17. I'm reading about how the children, left Israel. The children of Israel left Egypt, rather. And I'm in chapter 17, the manna from heaven. He supplied.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I read it this morning, Exodus 17.
That is so weird.
Yeah. It's divine. Wow. It's divine. That's the perfect God that we serve.
It is. And I certainly fall short a lot, but faith is important to me. Like And your husband was there for you, and my mother's been there for me always.
Mm-hmm.
But the only one I know who's been there every step I take is God and Jesus. They're the only ones I know. Everyone else can fade away, except my mom.
Yeah.
But
But you
like,
know what, Gavin, you said something, and this is what people tend to confuse. Saying you're a Christian does not mean you're perfect. Because just like you just
no,
said, we all sin every single day, either in thought or in deed, and fall short
yeah,
of the glory. The difference is whether it's willful. And if it's a willful sin, we must repent immediately. So make no bones about it. There's times that I have to go toe to toe with judges, toe to toe with prosecutors, and maybe that didn't come off so lovingly. And then I have to walk away and say, God, please forgive me. I know I did not let my light shine in that moment, and I'll try to do better. So we have to get rid of this notion that being a Christian means being perfect. Because once you fall, the first thing everyone's going to say, "Oh, I thought you were a Christian." No, I'm human, and I love
yeah,
God, and I'm going to walk in His principles and do my best every day, and that is what He requires from us.
no, and you're right. And there was only ever one perfect person, and that
That's
was
right,
Jesus Christ.
Jesus,
There,
Amen.
there have been none other. And you are and you're manifesting this. I very much believe that you can't go and yell in someone's face, "Love Jesus." You lead by example, and then they come to you and start asking, "Well, how do you do this?" Well,
Hmm.
through my faith, through this, and you let me. And I know this is a little off topic, but do you ever think when you retire from being a lawyer, if that ever happens, of like going into the ministry or anything like that?
I'm already there. Um,
Oh, are you?
I'm there because I lead with love. So what I started to do when I first had my private practice, I would take notes on Sunday, and then I started to mail them to my clients that's incarcerated because I felt like they needed the most encouragement. And what started off as, once in a blue moon, I do it once a month. So they get maybe 3 pages worth of inspiration scriptures to reference. And I remember one year I was in trial back to back, and I just slipped on a month. And I go visit my client, and after we're done, we usually pray. That's another thing. I pray with all of my clients. If they're a new client, I first ask them, and I say, "Is it okay if I pray?" And if they say okay the first time, then that's how we end our conversations. So, and no one, by the way, no one has ever said no. Um,
I love
so
that.
one day I'm visiting my client in jail, and right before we prayed, I said, "Do you have any other questions?" That's how I kind of end my conversation. And he said, "Miss Early, I have a bone to pick with you." And I'm saying to myself, "Well, pick it, because what did I do? I am fighting for your case. What is it?" And he says, "You didn't send me last month's monthly wisdom."
Oh my
When I
God.
tell you, I almost fell back in my chair because no one, when I send it out, I don't get responses. I don't get, "Oh, Miss Early, that was a good one." I don't get any feedback. And I just do it and I just do it. So in my head, I'm saying, I don't really think they're reading it, but I'm going to continue to follow what you told me to do, God. When he said that, I want to cry in the inside because that's the problem with us. We want to plant the seed. We want to stay there and water it. We want to watch it grow. We want to make sure it's manifest. That is not our job. Our job is to spread the gospel, and God will provide the increase. So I was so grateful. I had another client, he's still in custody. He started a Bible study from my monthly wisdoms. So when you think of ministry, it's not having a platform and being on stage. Ministry is spreading the gospel. And how be it that I used to be incarcerated and now I have empathy and compassion because I once was there. So, in addition to doing that, I also have another ministry where I send literally this morning, they picked it up. I've collected non perishable food, gently used clothing, and I pick it up and I mail it all the way to Jamaica. That's where my dad is from, to a country where they barely have running water or basic plumbing, and we distribute it. So that is my ministry, is to show love because God blesses us to be a blessing.
Wow. That's really powerful stuff. And it is, you're giving me a lot to think about of how I can do better myself, to be honest. There's growing up in our secular society, there's almost derision towards being a person of faith. They'll spout it as illogical or where's the proof or et cetera, et cetera. And the fact is that you and I both have been blessed that we've seen proof. And I guess that, and it's a burden that you're carrying that imposes us on a stronger burden to preach the gospel. And I can't remember the specific Bible verse, but there's something to the effect of, imagine those you have seen and yet you did not believe. Maybe it was to Doubting Thomas, and imagine more so for those who have not seen and believe.
Yes, yes.
And Thomas became very prolific in his missionary. So I know, and I pulled this up on ChatGPT, but there's this Bible verse that it says is a guiding principle for, and it says, "For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required."
Yes.
And that's from Luke 12:48. What does that verse mean to you?
It means that God has blessed me beyond measure. I grew up, so when my dad was with us, he owned a store in New York and we moved down to Florida, but he would fly back and forth and run the store in New York. So we had a 5-bedroom house in Florida. We grew up very well. There was a little guest house in the back. So when he left, he basically left my mom with nothing. So we went from the suburbs, just like your story, to the inner city in Miami. And we grew up, in poverty. We didn't have much. And I knew that education was the only way that I can break this generational curse. So when God has blessed my law firm and when he blesses me financially, I'm again guided by the principles. We came in here with nothing and we will leave with nothing. And the two principles that I think about is that one, but also we have to leave things for our generation, our future generations. So he blesses me to be a blessing. And the closer I get to God, the more I want to give. The ministry that I have, sending non-perishable food and gently used clothing, I don't even have a nonprofit set up yet. I just take the profits out of my law firm and I use that. Eventually, I will set it up. But I saw a need, and that need could not wait for me to get my paperwork together. That need, they need the food, they need the clothing, and they need it now.
You are, yeah, and you know what we've talked about you as you've mentioned mentor. We've talked about you as a lawyer, but you're also a fashion designer. and my understanding is it's well, explain what your fashion brand is to me, please.
Well, here's the thing. I majored in political science, but my minor was fashion merchandising. So
Oh, wow.
I always loved fashion. Unfortunately, I didn't have the height to be a model. So I make clothes, but I did it for as a hobby, right? And when I became a lawyer, I'm like, why is it that I have to be confined to black, blue, and gray? So I mix my love for the law and fashion. And that is how I express myself in court. And I believe after being a lawyer for 11 years, going on 12, I have proven myself, as you can see, top 10, top 40, top,
Yes.
top, that you are going to respect me for what's in my head and not what's on my head or what I'm wearing. So I do a lot of community service. So I host fashion shows and I host a lot of speaking engagements, and people have a different idea of what an attorney is because I don't lead by saying I'm an attorney, but by the time they find out, wait a minute, you're an attorney? You're so down to earth. I didn't know you was an attorney. So it's me being humble because pride comes before a fall, but it's
Without question.
also mixing my love for fashion. So I'm not actually a fashion designer. However, I love fashion, and it's not labels. I don't care too much for those labels because in the back of my head, I'm thinking all that money I'm spending on that jacket, I can send food, to those in need. So my focus is just the love of fashion and expressing myself.
Now now correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is a brand. Is there a brand out there that is involved with you or anything like that, or did I misunderstand that?
Well, it's various clothing designers that I may wear and promote their labels, but not personally, not a personal brand for myself. So no.
Okay, no, fine, and I misunderstood, but well, one thing that's very important, fashion, and this is not a commentary on you, by the way, but we were in Japan with my daughter, and one thing I would like to see change, and maybe it is changing in the fashion realm, and Japan, like being slim is, I think actually there are fines if you're not slim, if your company and your employees aren't slim. And we went into a store, and it was like this Catholic school goth look kind of thing. And it said that, one size fits all. And I looked at my daughter, and I told her, you should try it on, and it didn't fit her, and it broke my heart
Yeah.
because
I'm dealing with that. Yeah, I can totally. I have one daughter and three sons. And my daughter teaches me so much because I can't say something and not lead by example. And one thing I don't want to do is focus on weight unless it's a health issue, right?
of
So if
course,
if you are bigger in size, but your tone, you don't have a stomach excessively large that's causing strain on your back and that's not inducing a medical issue, I do not want to go there. Okay. Unless it's health a priority, we should not be centered on this look. So we have to, as parents, instill in our children, not just, oh, a blanket statement, oh, you're beautiful, but explain why. And I've learned that, because there's sometimes I have to just tell my daughter, it's okay because look, mommy has it too, whether it's stretch marks or whether it's skin discoloration. Focus on this because no one can say
yeah,
anything to you when you are a high CEO. The way your body is, it's not going to matter because you'll have more power up here. And that's what I try to instill in her. She's so smart. In fact, I named her JL. After in the book of Judges, Deborah was the first female judge. JL
yeah,
was responsible for killing the enemy, but she used her beauty and her wisdom. So that name for my daughter. So instill that in your daughter. Disappointment will come, but that's your
yeah.
opportunity as a father to instill that in her.
It is, and I will tell you, being a single dad is terrifying. My daughter had her first female moment, and my
Oh,
at the time fiance wasn't there, and my ex-wife wasn't there. She was like, "Daddy, what do I do?" And I'm going on Google. What do you do when your daughter has her first period? It was terrifying.
listen, if it's terrifying for you, it still is for even for a mother because it's like
Yeah,
your little girl is growing
yeah.
up. So it's it's a good moment, but it is scary even for us. And I feel so bad. I'm a female, so don't feel bad.
Thank you, thank you. I hope I did okay. Now let me ask you: do you have any? Do you have a particular war story from the courtroom that really, like, if anyone were to ask you, what was the most significant legal event in your practice? Do you have one of those?
I sure do.
Tell us,
I'm
please.
gonna find that transcript. So, real brief, my client for a whole year, he had two open cases. He was going pro se, and that's unfortunate because he felt like his assistant public defender wasn't advocating for him, and he felt he could do a better job. And then a year into it, he hires me. So I'm only on the case, let's say, for a few months. Obviously, I'm not even prepared. I don't even have all of the discovery on his case. But the judge wanted to just push his docket. This case is old. I'm setting you down for trial. So I tell him, I said, Your Honor, I said, I'm not ready for trial. I say, even if you set me down for trial and force me to go to trial, I'm going to say on the record in front of the jury that I'm missing evidence and the judge is forcing me to go to trial. This is a Thursday. He warns me that I want to see you back here Monday with the jury. You will go to trial or there'll be consequences. Fine. So that Monday, I told my husband, take off of work. I need you to take me to court. I said, because one or two things are going to happen. I'm going to walk back out. We go home together, fine. Or the judge is going to hold me in contempt. And I don't know how long I'm going to be in jail, but I'm I'm not going. Oh, that's the thing. He told me not to say what I was going to say in front of the jury, that I don't have all the evidence and this is unfair. I was going to do a whole speech. So we get to court and he's telling me, Miss Early, I have the jury waiting out the door. What are you going to do? And I said, I'm not going to trial. And I'm going to tell the jury that you're forcing me to go to trial. So we're going back and forth. Next thing I know, there's additional security bailiffs, the same bailiff they call if you're going to have a guilty verdict. They're guarding the door. So you must have hit the panic button or the security
Oh
button.
my God.
But I didn't notice they were back there because I'm facing forward and I'm standing my ground. And then I remembered he said something about my client when my client was pro se. And I happened to be in a courtroom, and I reminded him, I said, well, Your Honor, I said, didn't you say X, Y, and Z? And he sat back and he looked at me, and I don't know what was going through his head. And he sits up and he says, you know what, Miss Early? I recuse myself off of all of your clients' cases. Have a nice day. And I said, you have a blessed one. And so I
Wait, wait,
turned
wait.
around, and that's when I saw the bailiffs.
Oh,
So
like,
yeah, I was willing to go down for my client. So I walk out with my client and I tell him, I said, you owe me a balance. I was about to go to jail for you. You better pay your balance. And he did.
uh, no, that's brilliant. And you know what it is? You know, and in regular life, I've often wondered if I were given the opportunity to be a hero or a coward, would I be a hero or a coward? You know, you don't really know until you're tested. And and I'll be very short on this, but first year of my legal career, judge wants me to testify against my client. I can't believe how much similarity we have and how the man, it's freaking me out, though.
I know. But I love that we're sharing a war story. So go ahead.
No, yeah. So they wanted me to testify against my client about his attendance outside, not at the hearing, but outside. And I was like, it sort of seemed against attorney-client privilege, Your Honor. So, you know, I go back. Eventually, he puts an order out. They depose me. I say attorney-client privilege, attorney-client privilege, attorney-client privilege. And then he issues an order for my arrest. And I show up, issue for my arrest if I did not testify. And so we're in court, and I don't know how it's settled. I wasn't involved in the settlement negotiation for some reason, but the case settled with my client. And at the end of it, now I do have to be completely honest. Bob Wesley was a public defender at the time. I'm like, if I go to jail, do I still get paid? He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, but whatever. I'm 25, 26, you know. But the judge, and I'm not going to say his name because otherwise he had one other thing that was off, but he was a good judge. He was like, you know, Mr. Elliott, if you wouldn't have testified, I would have thrown you in jail. And I'm like, Your Honor, I would have gone. And I could see him like sort of sit back a little bit, to like the power of incarceration would force me to forego my principles. Like I would be so easily dissuaded from who I am because a judge is threatening me with jail. No, like
No. And that's the thing. I've been there before. So
yeah.
I was already prepared. I already knew what to expect. And I was willing to go down for righteousness. This is how I am all my cases. And I fight for what's right. I'm battling another judge now where she's forcing me to go to trial. I have 3 drug trafficking cases. I've only been on for 4 months. She's forced 7 trial. And I said, depositions are set the following month. Come on, Your Honor, you're being unreasonable. Oh, you're going to trial anyway. So you know what? If I have to file legal motions, I will do that because right is right. If I was mad, if I was just lingering on the case not working, I know that you are being unfair and there's legal principle and you are not following the rule of law. And there is no fear because God doesn't give you the spirit of fear, power, love, and a sound mind. So the more I read my word, I feel like I'm empowered by the Holy Spirit. I'm empowered by God who takes away my fear. I'm not paralyzed by fear when I know that I have good intentions and I'm doing the right thing.
Amen. And I had on one of my other podcasts, someone said something to the effect of fear, anxiety, weakness, depression. This is the devil inside of your head. This is not God speaking to you. This is not even you. This is the devil inside of your head. And I know this is stupid, but I was at the gym and I'm like, oh, my legs were shaking. And I said, get thee behind me. I know it sounds weird.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't though. Gavin, it doesn't. I'm telling you, like when you get closer to Christ, and this is what the world has to realize, what's foolish to the world is not foolish to God. So what you just said about you felt your legs getting weak and you probably was going to stop. I'm pretty sure the moment you said, devil, get behind me, that you had this renewed strength. It's not weird. It's not weird.
I did. I had the best workout on my legs in like forever. And since that moment in time, whenever I feel doubt, whenever I feel anxiety, I invoke Christ's name and I say, Satan, get thee behind me. And all the fear and all the anxiety goes away every time. It's crazy, man. It really, and this is just recent too. Yeah. It's so crazy.
Listen, I tell my kids, they tell me all the time, Mom, you're doing too much. Train up a child in the ways that they should go. And when they're old, they don't depart. So if I hear them say something to me that's negative, I stop them and I say, rebuke that. Or there's the power of life and death lies in your tongue. I don't want to hear you say that anymore. So yeah, they'll laugh at me now, but let me tell you something. Those principles are going to come automatic when they get older and they'll thank me later. But as of right now, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And this is the standard my husband and I are upholding for our generation. We will not waver. We will not succumb to the things of this world because it's a greater reward, eternity in heaven. I'm for it.
I'm a big fan. Hopefully I get in. I do have a question about you and your husband. Like, I mean, actually way back when, right after my divorce, I dated an attorney and she's like, you're not like regular attorneys. Like, are you able to switch off the attorney when you get home?
I try, like the other day we had a discussion and then I used the word evidence. And he's like, babe, he said, don't talk lawyer to me. And I'm saying to myself, I don't try to do it honestly, but I think what happens is it becomes you. Like even
It
with my
does.
children, like they know they can't just say, Ma, I'm going here. I will place you under cross examination until I feel satisfied. And you know what? That's just who I am. I try not to do too much, especially with my husband, but he reminds me, and a soft answer turns away wrath. So, but when I said that evidence word, I honestly didn't know I said it. So it's hard, but I think he understands that this is part of who I am, and I don't try to be like that, but
No,
it's in us.
no, it is. I, I have the complete inability to guarantee anything now. Every statement I make has a qualification.
There it is. It depends. Okay, we're not
Yeah,
giving
yeah.
history.
No, it's really annoying, to be honest. Like, if you ask me, is the sun going to come up tomorrow? Maybe. It's
It
insane.
depends on what. Well, it depends on it's in us, and what I mean. It's a blessing though because
Yeah.
I don't look at life the same. My kids go to Extreme Action Park and they tell me to sign that waiver. I'm crossing. I'm initialing, and I've never had anyone give it back to me. They just take it because they got a bunch of teenagers. My, my
Yeah.
my children better not break their neck because that name will be renamed to Early Action Park. But it's
That's
hard to look at
awesome.
the world the same way once you study law. It is hard.
No, it really is. So how can an insurance company deal with a trial dog like you? Like, what you do personal injury and like I know for a fact, and I'm not besmirching the practice of personal injury. There's a ton of strong attorneys, but I know there's also some attorneys who just settle. So how
Yeah.
does an insurance company deal with trial dog Casey? I mean, I can't even imagine.
Well, first of all, Gavin, you know that by far, criminal defense attorneys have the hardest job ever. First of all, the burden beyond a reasonable doubt is harder than the preponderance of the evidence, right? That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, if we by chance lose, our client goes to jail for life if it's a serious crime. So we are
Yes.
preparing, we are legal advocates through and through. So if you take that high burden and the amount of trials that I've done, over 100 in less than 10 years at the time, I stopped counting after
Right.
I stopped counting after 100. One day I'm gonna find out. That's why I have to keep it that way. But if you take that trial experience, what I've noticed, I just got out of the settlement conference yesterday. I noticed that they preconceive and they're like, they're not going to go to trial. So for their sake, I hope, especially when liability is beyond clear, I hope that they settle because it's something that's called bad faith and treble the damages. But oftentimes these litigators have to find out the hard way. But I'm
Well,
ready for
they
trial.
will, and they will. And I was actually studying. I was trying to find. There was a Cornell Law Review article I saw, and a few other articles where, and there are outliers. Obviously, some insurance companies are just hard headed no matter what. But there are also other insurance companies who they have full logs on every attorney they go against, their trials and everything. And if they see that an attorney like you do takes things to trial, their offers start getting way better.
It does, but the problem is if you take me through that whole discovery phase and I know liability is clear and I am a legal litigator, oh, we're going to trial. We're going to trial. So, and then I know that the award or the reward from the jury is going to be greater because liability is beyond clear. So I don't play those games, and we have to stay firm and zealously advocate for our clients' interests. So it's in their best interest to settle and give us, based on the evidence, or if not, you're going to pay more at the end.
Absolutely. So what's your favorite part of the trial? Is it the voir dire, the opening, cross, closing? What's your favorite part of a trial?
My most favorite part, I always say, take me to closing, and I'll take you to an acquittal. Closing, closing is where I blossom. And closing, the judge doesn't have much leeway because I already know my closing is going to be based on the evidence. So even if you object, I'm already ready for that. Voir dire, and every judge is different, and I have my way of doing things. But voir dire is very important because that's my second favorite. But closing, that is where I I shine the best on behalf of my client because I don't use notes. I may just have bullet points, but it's the passion. I always say what comes from the heart goes to the heart of the jury. There's times when I know that after I did my closing, I'm looking at the jury and I'm so in tune in what I'm saying. When I glance at the jury and I see tears puddling right there, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a 30-minute not guilty verdict. Yep. Or I've learned body language so much that when I say something and I shake my head, and if I
You start
see
shaking.
if I see that, I said, I know, because I need to feel what you feel. Once I get confirmation that I know you're on my side, I go even higher. I'm like, oh, it's okay. Now I got confirmation. But when you just give me this poker face and I can't read you, I don't want to
Right.
go too much because then I don't want to. So, but once I see the head shaking, at one time, I'll tell you this quick story. I was in trial. My client was facing the day of trial, they amend the information. So it goes from 5 years to 30 years, right? So, but we still had to go forward. Um, at closing arguments, I said, it was impossible for her to punch her, get her on the right eye. And what did she do? Do this? And then her hand turned like the Incredibles. One of the jurors laughed and he shook his head. I said, I know I got it. I know. Then he comes out. He's the foreman. So I whispered to my client, I said, not guilty, not guilty. So it was 2 counts. So the first count was not guilty. And she jumped up. She said, thank you. Thank you. I said, sit back down. I said, we have another count. And then the second count was not guilty. And I said, thank you, God. I said, never again will I do that. I was just so confident because I read his language in closing arguments, but it was the best ever. So we learned how to read body language.
Dude, and I used to, okay, I made one mistake in a closing quoting Othello, which is a little too esoteric. But I remember I had this one case where he was a nice guy. And actually, because of him, I'm a little paler of melatonin. And I used to go in, because of getting him off of his drug charge, I used to go to barbecues at his house and with his family all the time, every once in a while. But like, he was charged with possession of drugs, which, third-degree felony, not a big deal.
Right.
And traditionally, you don't have your criminal client hit a record. You don't have your client testify because you don't want the record coming in. But I did, because the theory of defense was that law enforcement wanted to flip him as a witness, and he just basically made up the charge. I had 3 cops testify that they had him have the drugs. My client came up there, admitted his record, and said, yeah, no, I did do all these things, but I didn't do this. They want to flip me against people in my neighborhood, and that's why they're coming against me now, to make an example of me. And so I also, during the course of the trial, there was like, well, how many people have you seen over the course between when you arrested them? I don't know, 500, 600 people. I'm like, okay. And I had my yearbook, and I'm like, and I had them go through it, and whatever the questions I asked, well, now tell me, do you remember how the person on this page looks and how the person on this page looks? And 5-minute not guilty verdict.
Wow.
The judge was pissed. Yeah.
Wow.
I like the, as you do, I like the, like with the Incredibles punch. I like the theatrics in closing. It's almost Shakespearean. It really is.
That's where we shine the most. I love closing. I love it. I love it. I love it.
No, so let me ask you a question. The last question I'm going to ask you, maybe a little follow-up, but you've told us where you've come from. You had a silver spoon, then your dad took it. And then you grew up and you were the first generation to go to college, first to go to law school, get into the Florida bar, or upon your own merit, but also arguably upon that baby that was in your womb while you were in jail's letter.
Yes.
Which is one of them, I've got chills upon my soul. I have chills right now as that sentence comes out of my mouth. It's so powerful. And also with God touching you while you were in there and giving you your purpose. And that child manifested that purpose for you. So you could leave this planet right now and you would have a legacy. But my
Absolutely.
question for you is what do you want your legacy to be? When Kaysia Early is written about in the history books, what are they writing about Kaysia Early?
That I surrendered my life to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and that I promoted the gospel and I passed it down to my generations. Nothing else matters. Everything else will fade away. The law firm, our age, our health. But what did I pass down? And that is the good news, the gospel. And that is the honest truth. That's how I feel. Like I tell my children, you live your life as if it's your last. And if you cannot honestly say, whether you believe or not, that there's a hell and there's a heaven, I said, if you can't place your hand over that stove for 5 seconds, can you imagine all eternity? And God doesn't want us to, He doesn't want us to be scared into loving Him. He doesn't want us to
No.
fear hell just to love Him. He
Yeah.
wants us to love Him because of the ultimate sacrifice. So to answer that question wholeheartedly, I have to say that that is paramount. I have to say that this is how God has blessed me with acquittals, because I didn't grow up with formal education. And actually, the way, even when I was in law school, I really believed that God sees my heart and He knows I have a heart for worship. And I'm so grateful that He gave me a second chance, because there's times I don't even feel worthy to even be a lawyer and own my own law firm and have the accomplishments. But I credit it all to Christ. So, to answer your question, my legacy, what's most important is, did I spread the gospel and did I show love? Because charity is above all. We're nothing without love.
Wow. That is, I will tell you that I have not had, listen, I've had very noble people with noble purpose. I have not had that. That has me rethinking my own legacy, because I will concede it was largely ego driven. It was more about a memory of me than a memory of Christ. I need to think on that a little bit, to be honest. I thank you so much for putting that out there. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation. You are extraordinary. I'm still a little freaked out that you were reading about manna and I made a manna reference during our conversation.
Read it in Exodus 17. And can I just say this, Gavin, to you, because I really enjoyed speaking to you and how our lives kind of mirror each other, the experiences we had growing up, as well as being assistant public defenders. And the reason I didn't want to say that I want to leave myself as a legacy is because this is why the children are supposed to honor their parents, because when they get older, they're going to see our flaws, right? Because we all have flaws. And then
Yes.
without honor, they will resent us. And this is why God placed that principle. And I am filled with flaws. I make mistakes. I made bad choices, even as an adult, even as a Christian. So I want them to see that mom was a Christian woman and she fought the good fight of faith and she proclaimed the love of God and she showed it. And if they see that, and if the attention is focused on Christ, then they won't see my flaws as much. Because until the day I die, we're going to sin, but we have to uphold the cross. So just that, the closer you get to God, your desires will change, your heart will change, and you will be better in your children's eyes because the love of Christ.
Very well said, Kaysia. I've never met anyone line up with me the way you do as far as past experiences in life, as far as passion. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I guess like the best thing that can happen from this podcast is that the words of the gospel that you have spoken and the character that you have exemplifying those words touches people's hearts.
Amen.
I think if after this, that can be the impact of it, that is the highest result.
Amen. Amen.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much again, Kaysia. We
Thank
will
you.
talk God, I know you have nothing but success. What the name of the law firm is?
Early Law Firm. So it's my last name, Earley. And if you want to know more about my story of incarceration, you can just Google my first and last name, Kaysia, last name Early, Earley. You can put jail right after it. It's all over Google. It is our ministry, and you are my brother in Christ. And I thank God for you. And I thank God that you allowed me to utilize your platform, like you said, to spread the gospel. So may God bless you and your platform abundantly. And I'm grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you, Kaysia.
Thank you so much, Gavin.
Thank you for listening to the Florida Forge podcast. If today's conversation inspired you, share it with someone building their own legacy here in the great Sunshine State. Until next time, keep forging what's next for Florida, and we'll see you soon.